Hello, all. Welcome in. Welcome in as you're joining us today for our webinar on building AI literacy in K-12. As you're joining us, I'd love to know more about who all is going to be with us today to make sure we're making the most of our time together. Please tell us about your role, the grade level of focus that you work with, and your district in the chat. If you're representing a state district, if you're representing a school or even a classroom, I'd love to know more about who all is with us today. So as people are trickling in, we'll give a couple of minutes for everyone to join us. Please share a little bit in the chat. We'll be talking today about building AI literacy in K-12, what using AI tools can look like, what kind of skills we need to be equipping our students with, and how to approach bringing technology into the classroom that can have really disparate effects on our students, on our classrooms, our teachers, our educators, our administrators are coming in with different ideas of what AI's capabilities are. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that can look like in the classroom in a pragmatic way. As we are all sort of coming in, getting settled in this morning, we'll get started in about 2 minutes. We'd love to know more about who all will be with us today. So please share in the chat where you're joining us from, what role you serve, what students, grade levels you are working with or focused on. And so we'd love to know just so we can make the most of our time together um, and tailor any of our ideas here to our audience. Great. So I see we've got folks from all over here in Chicago. Love to see a little bit of representation from CPS. Great. Colorado, North Carolina. Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing, everyone who shared a little bit so far. Wonderful. Lancaster, PA. Great. And I see a lot of different roles in the chat, which is awesome to see all the different ways that we can be thinking about the use of AI and the skills that we're working with our students in building across pre-K through some adult learning. I'd love to see all that different approach, all those different groups of students that we're working with, curriculum directors, principals. Great, some classroom teachers, CTE directors. Excellent. Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Since you all have been kind enough to share a little bit in the chat about who is here. By way of introduction, my name is Hope Thompson. I'm a senior manager of curriculum and instruction at NextWave. I'm a former elementary science teacher myself. I was in Baltimore and Chicago public schools. And I've also held roles in instruction and curriculum design for robotics and computer science for students in pre-K through 12. I love to shout out our pre-K students here too, because whenever we talk about STEM, it's so important that we're thinking about all students. All students have a place in STEM, and STEM has a place in all students' lives. And so even our pre-K students can be participating in some of these concepts and ideas. I've seen it myself. So I just like to really highlight that as an example of how thorough we want to be when we're thinking about STEM and the skills that we're equipping all of our students with. Now, as we're getting started, I'd love to know where you currently stand with AI in your classroom, in your school, in your district, in your organization. What does your policy look like, whether it's your personal policy or the policy of your district at large? On this scale from 1 to 4, now it's not exactly linear because we know there's a lot of different qualitative aspects to an AI policy, but roughly, which of these buckets would you find yourself in? One being there is no AI use in the classroom for students or teachers. It is discouraged or blocked. Two being most tools are blocked or discouraged. Some AI use maybe by teachers. Three being there is some blocked or discouraged use of tools, but it is open to a certain kind of controlled use by students and teachers. And four being AI tools are integrated into planning, instruction, learning tasks for students and teachers. Now, AI is a huge umbrella term for a lot of different tools. So again, there is some variability in what this can mean, but we're going to think kind of globally for right now. And we're going to talk over the next few minutes about what kinds of AI tools we might be thinking about beyond just those big ChatGPT, large language models that may come to mind immediately. So if you can just drop a number in the chat to identify where you all are. I see you have some variety going from one to two, threes, a lot of threes. Okay, great. So we have all over the place different approaches to AI right now. Now, whether that is a policy that is currently in conversation or flexible, district may be in conversation with how we could find appropriate uses of AI for these tools that are not going anywhere. And if you are at four, maybe you can expand your understanding of what kinds of tools are most appropriate for your practice, for your district, for your teachers and your schools. So we're going to look at how we can expand our understanding of these tools beyond what many teachers, districts may think of first when we talk about AI and the use of it with students, and how that we can use them more effectively to build literacy in these tools, to make sure our students are using them safely, effectively, ethically, in and out of the classroom. So to begin, I want to start by saying Next Wave STEM is very dedicated to this topic. This is something we've been thinking about for a long time. The conversation around AI has evolved, especially in the last 18 months, 2 years, has really picked up speed, but this is something that has been a part of our practice since we began. We believe that the world needs young innovators, so we offer hands-on courses in emerging tech designed to give students the confidence and the skills that they need to express themselves in what we have often said are the careers of tomorrow, but increasingly the careers of today in the world that our students already live in. Whether or not we address them, these are tools that students have access to outside of the classroom. They are tools that students encounter, and we have an obligation to equip them to use them correctly, ethically, safely, and well. So our goal is to empower educators to prepare students for the future, but also for the present. So today I want us to be centered around these three questions. Why do students use AI? When should students use tools like AI? And how can we use artificial intelligence to create meaningful learning experiences? How can we make sure that these tools are part of why a learning experience works and not just a pathway to complete it? To start off, I want us to think about why students are using AI to complete assignments. When we think about the most frustrating aspects of AI use, writ large for teachers, students using AI to complete assignments, why do we see students doing that? You can just drop a couple of ideas in the chat of why you think we're seeing some students, when possible, use AI to complete assignments. Thinking of things like essays where it's a little bit, it lends itself a little bit more easily to a large language model. But in any way, sort of using something like a ChatGPT tool to complete assignments. I'd love to get a little bit of perspective on why we think students may be doing that. And the things that we see and hear from educators all the time are that students are using AI to complete assignments because of a perceived lack of time or a true lack of time, especially as our students are increasingly burdened by assignments and packed school days, especially at the high school level, extracurriculars, perhaps a lack of interest. If it's not something that is their particular favorite subject or topic within a subject, this particular activity is not something that feels super close to a student's interest. Or a lack of confidence, a perceived lack of skill, feeling like they don't have the skills to complete this assignment. They are not equipped to do so. Whether or not that may be the case, that feeling of confidence is something that often comes up with students looking to these tools to help out. Yeah, I see feeling overwhelmed, looking for ideas. Maybe they just want to get something started, and they're looking to some tools to help the brainstorm process. Maybe they need some clarification, and looking to save time. Absolutely. Yeah, and the added pressure, certainly. We're gonna talk about that in just a second with this sort of results and accomplishment that students are focused on and expected to achieve. So what that tells us is that our students, when they're using AI to complete assignments, that's an important data point. It's giving us information about students and the assignments that we have given them, which is that the students are not finding these particular examples of assignments to be meaningful learning experiences that have their own inherent value. And whether or not we may agree with that understanding, that interpretation from the student, we have to acknowledge that now students are equipped in some ways with tools to complete assignments they feel that way about with AI. So our response needs to be measured and responsive to what students are telling us, what the world and the landscape that students are learning in is presenting. So I want us to think briefly about when it's appropriate to use a tool like AI. Even some of the examples that we heard here in the chat, different educators, different districts may have different opinions on whether the use of an AI tool is appropriate. Something like brainstorming, getting ideas, clarification. Is that something that's appropriate for students to use an AI tool like a large language model for? And when is using a tool like that considered cheating? What is the difference and where is that line? We can also think about other tools and the evolution of technologies. When did it become appropriate to Google information instead of going to the library? When did it become appropriate to use power tools instead of hand saws and hammers, or to clean our clothes in a washing machine instead of by hand? All of these tools did shorten the time that is given to complete a task, and we can easily draw a line between some AI tools and the use of other technologies. A tool is worth using to complete a task, thinking about Google or a washing machine, when the task itself is not experiential. The value of the task is not the completion of it, the process of it. When the value of the task is its accomplishment, the results. Or the task takes so much time that regardless of the value of the process, it keeps us from other experiences that are more joyful, more meaningful, more impactful in our lives or our learning. Or confident use of the tool itself is a joyful, a useful, or a meaningful experience, a skill in and of its own right. So how do we bring that back to our educational experiences for our students? Well, when we think about meaningful learning experiences, both those in our own learning journeys, our school careers, and the ones that we design for our students, they really boil down to a few of these categories: accomplishment, play, exploration, service, creation, and connection. Think about projects that your students are working on to showcase their skills, to develop their skills, whether that is something like a well-written essay or a test that they faced, an accomplishment. If they are working on a long-term iterative project with a group of students to solve a problem, that's going to touch on service, creation, and connection. Play, your students having an opportunity to have sandbox exploration in a topic, in an experiment, in a technology. Those learning experiences have a different sort of flavor than something like an accomplishment. A lot of our education system today is focused on accomplishment, and a lot of that is necessary. We need to measure whether students have the skills. We need to have assessments. We need to have essays. We have students who will have skills that they can't display in other ways. There is some level of results-based accomplishment that is necessary when we're measuring skills with our students. But it's also something that AI tools are really good at producing results. So a student can write a paper, an AI tool like ChatGPT can write a paper, and depending on the level of familiarity you have with AI writing, that can look really, really similar. So AI tools, the way that we often think about students using them, that teachers and schools have frustrations with students using them, are around these accomplishment-based, results-based learning tasks. But AI cannot have an experience for you. When we think about experiential learning, moving towards learning tasks and activities that are based in play and exploration, service, self-expression. All of these things are things that a large language model cannot do for you, not something that students can outsource to a chat GPT. So how do we shift our educational design towards experience-based learning? Now, many of the educators here in this chat, here at your districts that you represent, are already thinking about experience-based learning. We know that project-based learning has been a topic of conversation for many years, and the best practices for many of the subjects and topics that our teachers are teaching. But how do we think globally about how we can shift education towards these experiences that integrate AI at the same time, that also provide students with an arena to practice, develop, and understand the use of AI appropriately? What AI can do for students, the results-based learning that we often see in classrooms, things like answering questions, having things that are deliverables, what can we develop with the use of an AI tool or without, essays, problem sets, memorization, and test taking, all things that AI can do well. Now, of course, we may have guardrails to prevent students from using AI for any of these, but these are all results that AI can produce. As opposed to experience learning, like asking questions, sandbox exploration, giving students time to explore, group interactions, having a culture within the classroom of celebrating failure and the opportunities that it opens up to us, long-term projects, self-expression and creation, and improvisation, following along with students' interests, moving in the direction of where the class is thinking. These are things that only students and teachers can do. So when we focus our design of instruction on these sorts of activities and structures for learning, we eliminate the possibility of students using AI as a shortcut. We introduce the opportunity to use AI as a tool, as a skill throughout any of these activities, so that we're not saying that students need to be in a world completely exempt of AI. We're not expecting them to shirk that technology, to completely avoid the building of those skills. We're just creating situations where students can use it to enhance their learning and not to as a shortcut. So where does AI come in on a lot of these? We're going to go through a couple of examples from K through 12 of how we can use AI in experience-based learning activities. With our youngest students, our K through 2, or even our pre-K students, students can start to understand the fundamentals of what artificial intelligence is without necessarily using the tools, because we have this obligation twofold: to use this tool to enhance our learning experiences, but also to build an understanding of what AI is. So students can simulate the technology themselves to start to understand those foundational concepts, things like pattern recognition, classification, data analysis, sequencing, and algorithms, starting to build the skills of the back end of an artificial intelligence model so that later on we introduce the tools, they have the foundation of knowing what it can and cannot do. So for example, in our next wave curriculum, our K through 2 students are working to update a zoo, a simulated zoo that is introducing smart technologies in order to improve its operation. So students may do activities like listening to the difference between sounds that some of the zoo animals are making. And after sorting those different sounds and what they reveal about the animal, coming up with an appropriate response. If an animal's behavior is indicating that they are sleepy or hungry, how would the zoo respond? So they are acting as the AI that is doing that pattern recognition, that classification, and the decision making as a result. but without necessarily introducing any tools just yet. So there's a lot of different standards alignment that can come into this. This is just one example, but I'm including some key ideas and jumping off points for what other applications this can have. So all of this work in AI, whether it's foundational and conceptual or working with tools, is going to touch on computer science skills. So the decomposition of problems, sequencing and algorithmic thinking, understanding software and hardware concepts, because we're talking about the use of software while we're simulating it, and the impact of technology, understanding how differently humans can live and work after the advent of a technology like AI. But they're also working on some ELA and math skills, like asking and answering questions. They can use comparing and contrasting text to help support their decision making and their pattern recognition. They're understanding and interpreting data and making decisions based on that data. One activity has our K through 2 students analyzing the busiest days of the week at the zoo based on a bar graph and developing a software technology, but it's just the student that will respond with appropriate staffing levels. And then it offers a myriad of applications for science, living and non-living things, animal adaptations, wherever students can be doing a sort, which our elementary and primary teachers know there's a 1,000 different applications for sorting in the classroom across different topics and subjects, is a place where we can start to introduce the concepts of AI and how fundamentally sorting and pattern recognition are the bedrock of any model. So students can later on, as they build on that understanding, know that it comes down to that level of pattern recognition. In third through fifth grade, our middle elementary students are ready to start thinking about the use of tools, thinking through generative or analytic AI, understanding the differences between different kinds of AI. What we're talking about when we say artificial intelligence isn't just large language models. There is a whole host of different applications of artificial intelligence, of machine learning, where students can be engaging in the differences between those kinds of technologies and tools, and also in conversations around the ethics and implications of their use. Our students in grades 3 through 5 in next wave programs engage in hearty debate that is pretty impressive and mature for this grade level. They really want to participate in this conversation that they know the adults around them are having as well about when it's appropriate to use these tools as it relates to art or work. They can start to explore tools that are designed to help understand and underscore the foundations of AI. So a tool like Google Quick Draw, which is a smart Pictionary kind of game that walks students through the data set that is being used to analyze their drawings. We can talk about the fact that 10 years ago, it was a lot easier to beat Google Quick Draw, but all of the play testing since then has added to this diverse data set. It's gotten smarter. But what does it mean to be smarter? It has more data. It's comparing it to different examples in its data set. So students are engaging in conversation around bias, the capabilities, the limitations of AI, how AI grows and becomes quote unquote smarter. And they're also able to train models. So tools like machine learning for kids or Google's Teachable Machine give students an opportunity to build and train their own machine learning model. So again, they get to see what happens when a model is trained and test out that model. So they're both training and verifying the efficacy of a model. So the example that you can see up here is student has created a model with some basic data sets of nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Now, with this small data set, students can then start to test it out. They're going to give the model another example of a word and see which of these it sorts it into. Now, as students are doing that, they're also evaluating whether or not it's effective. If I put in a particularly difficult word like fly, which is both a noun and a verb, and I find that I have stumped my model, or I put in a word that I know for sure is an adjective and it considers it a verb, I know that I need to improve the data set. I'm going to add more data, more examples of words that are closer to this. I have found sort of a loophole, a catch in my data that I need to improve so that I don't have this biased model. So students are still developing those same skills that they would in a traditional noun, verb, adjective sort, but they're actually also getting higher level thinking, higher in Bloom's taxonomy of justifying and evaluating the results of this. So they're getting to actually deepen their thinking when they're using this tool than they would if they were using a traditional paper sort. So for our standards alignment, lots of computer science applications, again, refining those algorithms, understanding software, comparing impacts of technology. They're talking through when it's appropriate to use generative AI versus something that's more analytic. But also those math and ELA standards are touched on as well. They're getting vocabulary practice. This is a great way, training models is a great way to get a little bit more solid vocabulary understanding. Maybe they're supporting their opinion in the use of AI. And so they're getting some of that claim evidence reasoning. They're getting a little bit of persuasive writing. They're using patterns and using tools appropriately for some of those math standards. And then for science, possibilities are endless. Teachable machine and machine learning for kids are tools that can take text, audio, or image sorting. So those data sets can be pictures of different kinds of volcanoes, and we're testing in or different landmarks, and we're inputting a new image to test it out, and the student is evaluating, well, I know that is a mesa, so how am I going to fix my data set so that it doesn't get incorrectly sorted as a volcano? So all sorts of applications to enhance the learning that you see happening for specific skills and specific subjects, but also building an understanding of when I use AI in my personal life, in the future, in my career, in the classroom, even still, students can remember that these are limited by their data sets, and that is going to affect what is appropriate use of an AI. For our 6th through 8th and 9th through 12th graders, we can see students training more complex machine learning models and actually begin to program their own smart chatbots. So taking those same computer science skills, but creating a smart chatbot that connects a machine learning model like Teachable Machine with a chatbot. So they can feed that information into a chatbot that responds. So now instead of testing it out necessarily on Teachable Machine or on the machine learning model, I can chat with a chatbot. I've created a little character who I'm asking if this word is a noun, a verb, or an adjective for a simple example. But our middle and high school students are able to do it a little bit more with a little bit more complexity, a little bit more focus on creating solutions and problem solving or making connections to more complex topics, especially in their science and ELA classrooms. So on the left, you can see a really simple block program for a pretty rudimentary chatbot, very specific very specific responses. It's going to say things like, I love to code, looking for answers that are either yes or no. There's only a few ways to interact with it versus the flow chart you see on the right that will be used to make a more specific, a more advanced chatbot, one that is looking for keywords, trying to decide what kind of question is being asked in order to proceed into the most appropriate response. So that teachable machine learning model we saw just a moment ago is now sorting words like place an order, takeout, and delivery into a box that is appropriate for a response like, you are looking for delivery, here are our options. Another box that is saying things like hours, open time, flows into a response like, here are our hours and location. Just as an example, this is a chatbot obviously for a restaurant, but has a lot of different applications. Students can build a chatbot that helps them study for a test. Students can build a chatbot that debates concepts with them. They can build a chatbot that behaves like a historical character. Now they have a chatbot that behaves like or responds like Marie Curie, and they're debating the pros and cons of nuclear energy with that chatbot. Or a character from their novel study, and they have given evidence that they understand this character's motivations and characterization throughout the novel by this chatbot. So there's a lot of different applications that students can use in order to see their skills in computer science and an understanding of AI alongside their delivery and their process of some of the core subjects that they are studying. So they're getting a chance to practice debugging and refining algorithms. Maybe our high school students are even pushing past these block programming. They're developing the skill in text-based programming like Python, something that's more industry level. So the computer science skills can be quite advanced, while also getting some ELA skills like tone, impact in writing, character analysis. They're getting math skills of algebraic thinking or using variables, or they're even creating a chatbot that completes these different functions that they're learning in algebra. In science, again, we are not limited because there is such a host of content in science for vocabulary, for sorting, for classification, for constructing and supporting arguments, endless opportunities for students to use these skills to build a chatbot, just as an example, or an advanced machine learning model. We have one activity students are doing where they are completing a smart city. They're coming up with sustainable solutions to preserve energy. Part of that is creating a machine learning model for sorting different recyclable materials. So how can we create a model that automates this so that there's no need for a person to evaluate whether something is appropriate or what kind of recyclable it is? That's just one piece of a long-term iterative project. Students are not using the AI to complete that. It's not a shortcut, but it is a tool that they're using in the same way that they may use a presentation software. So I want to boil down all of these example activities. I know I've thrown a lot of different examples at you just now, but what do they all have in common? When you are going back to your classrooms, to your teachers, to your districts, what is the formula for creating an AI experience that builds the literacy of understanding what AI can be appropriately used for and how to use it? And also is meaningful. It's building experiences, it's enhancing what teachers are able to offer in the classroom. We want to think about using a variety of tools beyond the large language model. When you hear AI today, many of us think something like ChatGPT. But AI is an umbrella that includes machine learning, like some of the tools that we've looked at today, that can have a variety of applications. So if you are someone who's responsible for creating an AI policy for your school, for your district, for your state, think about whether we are specifically tailoring that policy to the use of generative AI, large language models, or machine learning models that students can partake in. We also want to be shifting our students from users to creators. How can we make sure that students, when they're using these tools, are not just consuming the output, but designing, manipulating, and aiming for a certain output by being involved in the input? Students are creating and building using tools like Teachable Machine, using tools like Google Quick Draw to understand the concepts, and block programming languages to build sequences that make them a creator and a designer, that it's a process and not just a result. As educators, how can we design experiences rather than tasks? The best way to make sure that students are not using AI as a shortcut, but as a tool, is to design an experience that AI cannot have for your student. Making sure that whenever possible, our learning tasks that involve AI do so with a really clear pathway for students to integrate these tools as part of the process and not the result. And then ultimately building those computer science skills so that students are using AI safely and effectively in and out of the classroom. If students understand the algorithm, they understand the sequencing, the data set that somebody trained this model on, it will encourage them to use AI more safely and more effectively to understand what it's really good at, what it's most appropriate for, and what it is not. Those computer science skills are applicable outside of the world of AI. There are a myriad of applications of computer science skills that will serve students increasingly in the world that they are already living in. This is not just in the hopes that they will use these tools someday. They already live and work and learn in a world where these tools are a part. So we want to make sure that we are equipping them to do so most effectively. Now, I want to show you a little bit of how AI fits into Next Wave STEM's offerings. You can see here in this purple box, we do have an AI course for all of our grade bands, K through 2, 3 through 5, our 6 through 12 intro, and then our 9 through 12 advanced, if we want to push students towards some of those more advanced computer science applications, where we're thinking about industry level programming languages. But our AI skills, like I said, are not limited just to this collection of courses. When you work through some of these skills, you're going to see them come up again and again in our computer science courses, like robotics and drones and game design. The engineering and design process, not unfamiliar to students who have built something, whether it's a digital or a physical artifact. So even some of those concepts in 3D design and innovation are going to echo the design process of an effective AI algorithm. So a lot of those skills going across, but also a great way to see some of the tools to be introduced to the concepts, both for students and teachers. Because our offerings include PD resources, we know that all educators don't have time to stay on the cutting edge of AI. That's our job. We do provide resources so that teachers can understand those foundational skills as well as students. So highly recommend starting with an AI focused course to bring AI into the world of your teachers and students, because once teachers are aware of and fluent in these kinds of tools, they're going to see all the different applications. Once you understand and have played around with something like a simple teachable machine learning model, you may say, oh, I could totally see how this works for this next science unit that I have, or this could really revamp that end of novel project that has been losing a little bit of interest from my students these last couple of semesters. So once you have built up that familiarity, it's as valuable for the teachers to have those skills as it is for the students. Now, every one of these boxes, when I say we have a STEM course, I want to be specific about what that is. That's going to include 15 lessons, at least. Many of our courses even have expansion lessons as the technology evolves. We've added on our courses, and some have gone up to 20 lessons. And that's going to mean 15 teachers' guides, highly supportive lesson plans, where teachers, regardless of their background in the topic, can be a confident leader and facilitator of these activities. Presentations that teachers are sharing with the students, student worksheets, answer keys, assessments, whether that is most appropriate to have something digitally where students are screenshotting their code and sharing it with their teacher, or something like a traditional pen and paper assessment. Scope and sequence documents, which outline the standards alignment for every single lesson and every objective within them. And then an online teaching portal where all of these are held along with our professional development resources. And this is just a snapshot of a single course, but with the Next Wave STEM license, you are getting a collection of courses within the grade band. So you have access to robotics, drones, 3D printing, AI across that grade band. And because I'm an educator, I know this is the bottom line for any resource, is the quality of that resource and its alignment with state standards, national standards as well. So we do cover some of those national, well, all of those national and computer science and science standards like NGSS, Computer Science Teachers Association, some of those overarching standards are our focus. We also do cover ELA and math standards and 21st century skills. In addition to specific states, that scope and sequence document is going to also include specific state breakdown of technology, math, or ELA standards as appropriate. And I want to give you one more glance at that breadth of offerings. Our AI literacy, you can see in that third column, those courses, 15 lessons in the kinds of activities that we started to look through today. But a large variety of other tools are included in an exploration of more specific AI tools like voice recognition, facial recognition, working through some of the ways that we see AI pop up in our lives as well as robotics, drones, 3D tech, innovation, sustainability, and game design. All of those courses across, if you go across a row from one of these grade bands, are included with our resources. And I want to thank you so much for your participation today. I really appreciated getting to see a little bit of your perspective in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing who you are, where you're joining us from, and what your approach to AI has been so far. I'm hoping after today you're feeling inspired to broaden your understanding of AI in the classroom or to help your teachers, your classrooms, or your districts to bring in some of these tools that can both enhance the learning that's already going on in your classrooms and also equip students to use these tools safely and effectively. Please use this link here to check out our curriculum samples. You can use this QR code or visit nextwavestem.com to download some samples from all of our courses to see that level of support, those high quality teachers' guides that really do support all teachers in providing this instruction. I will stick around for a minute or two if you'd like to share any questions on mic or in the chat. I'll stay for a few more minutes to answer as best I can. But I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. And I'm hoping that you're feeling inspired and ready to take some of these exciting activities back to your students. Thank you all so much.
Hope, Jeff actually asked if he says, I'm curious if people have some strategies to get teachers to use AI to plan better differentiation, better tasks, etc. Because he's been pushing for this for about a year and a half and can't get the teachers on board. I'm going to shoot in the link right now, a AI policy builder that may help you, Jeff, but hope you can help him out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one key thing, and you may have already encountered this as well, Jeff, is making sure that when we're talking about AI, we are zooming out far enough to see what other things are out there besides ChatGPT. For many of our educators, those frustrations with teachers, with students using ChatGPT in ways that are not desirable from an educator's perspective can sort of be the first thing that they hear. When you hear AI, you think ChatGPT, you think, well, maybe there's a way here or there. It could be in my classroom, but for the most part, it's better if I don't use it. So I think starting from a place of saying, here is some analytic AI that students can design, that students can use, but cannot do any thinking for the student because the student is there every step of the way. And putting the noun and saying, well, my model thinks it's an adjective, so I better fix my model. Getting some of those higher order thinking skills. So I think also starting from a place of understanding the breadth of tools that are out there when we say AI, but also having some of the thinking and the planning outlined for educators when using some of these tools. So it's pretty hard to come up with ways to use these tools if you're not really familiar with them. Starting with something like the activities in our courses so that teachers build a little bit more fluency with the tools, and then they can step into the creative applications, I think is a great way too. Having something that is a reliable activity that's been planned and proven successful, like our Next Wave STEM activities, can kind of be a good a model, a template for teachers to use to build fluency in and then get creative with later on. Any other questions that we can advise on while we're here? I'd be happy to share any perspectives that I can or resources with you all. Please feel free to drop any other questions in the chat or even to come off mic. All right. Well, in the absence of any other questions, I hope you'll check out our curriculum and the AI policy framework that Paula has shared to help you get started with refining or maybe creating an AI policy for your classroom, school, or district. Thank you all so much for being here. It's been a pleasure getting to hear a little bit of your perspective. And this recording will be emailed out to you on Monday as well. Thank you so much.